After my rebirth, I decided to grant the crown prince and the love of his life their heart's desire. With a wave of my hand, I welcomed her into the palace as his concubine. In my past life, I had loved Crown Prince Arthur so desperately that upon learning he only saw me as a substitute, I threw myself into a river and died filled with resentment. Yet after my death, the two of them whispered sweet nothings, living a life of blissful love. This time, I decided not to stand in their way. I would let them indulge in their moonlit trysts and drunken pleasures within the deep palace walls. After all, in this harem, other women would surely step forward to do the work for me. And I would be the one pulling the strings, the final victor waiting in the wings. My soul hovered in the air, watching silently as Arthur gazed upon my body, dredged from the river. He spoke to his servants in an utterly indifferent tone. What a pity. He didn't shed a single tear for my death. To him, my passing was merely a regrettable inconvenience. His coldness made my years of devotion feel like a complete joke. The bitterness in my heart was so strong that my soul could not disperse for days. I followed him, watching as he brought his true love, Saraphina, into the Crown Prince manor as a concubine. I watched them dote on each other. I watched as Saraphina personally sewed new robes for him, which he then wore every single day. On the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival, they drank wine under the full moon like a pair of celestial lovers, their happiness absolute. I remembered my own wedding day. As the daughter of the Prime Minister, my marriage to the Crown Prince was blessed by my family. He had looked at me with such tenderness, promising he would never fail me. At that moment, I truly believed I had married the man of my dreams, that he would cherish me daily and hold me as the most precious person in his heart. But it was all a farce from the very beginning. Arthur had married me simply because my features bore a slight resemblance to his beloved Saraphina. I never imagined the classic tale of being a mere substitute would happen to me. When I discovered the truth, I couldn't bear his deception or the way he had trampled on my genuine affection. That night, I cast aside all decorum and frantically demanded to know if he had ever loved me, but he only answered with calm, detached words. "Catherine, you should know that it is your good fortune to resemble her. Otherwise, why would you think I married you?" It was on that same night that I chose to drown myself, dying full of hatred. In the final moment before my consciousness faded, I swore that if I were given another chance, I would never love the Crown Prince again. Perhaps the heavens heard my plea, for when I next awoke, I had truly been reborn. In this life, I decided to be a virtuous and graceful crown princess, and I would never speak of love again. When I opened my eyes again, I found I had been reborn to the day Saraphina returned to the capital. Saraphina was the woman Crown Prince Arthur cherished above all others. Years ago, while traveling incognito, he had met Saraphina, a commoner, and fallen for her at first sight. Upon returning to the palace, he petitioned the emperor time and again, asking to marry Saraphina as his crown princess. But the emperor repeatedly rejected his request. Saraphina's status was too low. Even becoming a concubine was a great honor. The position of crown princess had to be chosen between the Prime Minister's daughter and the Grand General's daughter. And because my face resembled Saraphina's, the title of crown princess fell to me. In my previous life, 3 months after entering the manor, I became pregnant and was advised against marital duties. It was during this time that Arthur approached me to discuss taking Saraphina as a concubine. I was furious when I learned of this, and vehemently opposed the presence of any other woman in the manor. After all, what wife would willingly share her husband? But I was too naive upon hearing my refusal. Arthur's face darkened with anger. He reprimanded me for not being virtuous and graceful, and from that day on, he never set foot in my chambers again. Only later did I discover that he had set up a separate home for Saraphina outside the palace, where they could meet for their clandestine, romantic trysts under the moon. Worse still, I found a carefully preserved painting in his study. It was a portrait of Saraphina. In the bottom left corner, a line of poetry was inscribed. Even in having you, a mere echo of her, she is irreplaceable. No one else will ever compare. So, from the very beginning, I was nothing more than a substitute. The one he loved was never me, therefore. This time, when a servant informed me of the princess' return, I went to his study of my own accord. Inside, a faint scent of a woman's perfume clung to him. He had been with Saraphina again. I knew it. Seeing me, Arthur asked what I needed. My gaze, however, fell upon the carefully rolled painting on his desk. I knew it was Saraphina's portrait, the source of his sleepless nights. If that was the case, why not help the lovers reunite? My prince, have you considered taking a concubine? At my initiative. Arthur stared at me in astonishment. The ink dripped from his brush, staining the fine paper. But he didn't even notice. After a long moment, he finally came to his senses, put down his brush, and looked at me in disbelief. My princess, why this sudden thought? I lowered my gaze and smiled faintly. I told him that it was customary for a man to have multiple wives and concubines. The vast crown princess manor had only me, and I felt I lacked the strength to expand the royal lineage on my own. Therefore, I have been thinking these past few days, why not take a few concubines? It would be another way for me to serve you with all my heart. My considerate words brought a wide smile to Arthur's face. He rushed to my side, feigning deep affection as he tightly gripped my hand. Catherine, your understanding is truly a blessing to me. I said nothing, only offering a faint smile. This was a blessing I could do without. Fearing I might change my mind, Arthur quickly told me that he did indeed have someone in mind. I nodded. In that case, let us choose a day to welcome our new sister into the manor. However, as soon as I said this, the smile on Arthur's face faltered slightly. He looked at me, his grip on my hand tightening unconsciously. Since we are welcoming a new sister, why not welcome a few more at once? The Grand General's daughter, Isabella, is also quite taken with you, my prince. It would be a shame to disappoint such sincere feelings. And I have met Clara, the Grand Tutor's daughter. She is a gentle and meticulous young woman. I would feel at ease with her serving you. Why don't we have all three sisters enter the manor on the same day? It would give them a chance to get acquainted, and also save the household an expense. What do you think, my prince? Arthur was so overjoyed he could barely contain his smile. But when he met my questioning gaze, he pretended to ponder the matter before nodding in agreement. Excellent. The crown princess is virtuous and thoughtful. We shall proceed as you suggest. My proposal delighted Arthur so much that he failed to notice anything unusual about my behavior. He even rewarded me with fine coal and a luminous pearl. 5 days later, on an auspicious day, 3 small sedan chairs were lined up before the side gate of the Crown Prince's manor, each refusing to yield to the others. The sight was a source of amusement for the other royal princes. At that moment, I was in the main hall, sipping new tea from the south. The head steward, his forehead beaded with sweat, rushed to my side. Your Highness, the 3 ladies are waiting outside. How should we arrange the order of their entry? Hearing this, I set down my teacup and feigned a troubled expression. Such an important matter should be decided by the prince himself. After all, these are the women who will serve him. Steward Zhang, please go to the royal study and ask the prince to come to the manor. Steward Zhang obeyed and hurried off towards the royal study. Meanwhile, I could clearly hear the sounds of the 3 women arguing at the side gate. It seemed the Crown Prince's manor was in for some lively days ahead. Within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, Arthur arrived at the manor in a hurry. After hearing the situation, he frowned slightly and proposed they enter according to their family's rank. I knew that in his heart, he wanted Saraphina to be first, but with so many people watching as the Crown Prince, he understood the need for political balance. And so, the 3 women entered, served tea, and were led by attendants to the rooms. Arthur had personally chosen for them. The next day, as soon as I left my chambers, I heard a heated argument from the main hall. "Me personal maid," Daisy informed me. "Those three ladies woke up early to prepare a lavish breakfast for the prince. Now they are fighting over whose courtyard he should dine in." I smiled faintly, and with Daisy's support, walked towards the main hall. When they saw me, they curtsied slightly in greeting. "Please rise, sisters. We are all family here. There is no need for such formalities." After they stood, Clara, the Grand Tutor's daughter, approached me and began to plead her case. "Your Highness, I heard that the princess' favorite treat is peach blossom pastries. I stayed up all night to make these myself. They are perfectly sweet without being cloying. I was hoping the prince could enjoy them first thing in the morning. Surely, eating his favorite food would improve his mood. Would it not?" My eyes fell on the plate of pastries she held. They were indeed exquisitely made, with a delicate pink hue, dressed in her pink gown today. She looked as delectable as the pastries themselves. The others naturally saw through her intentions. Before I could speak, Isabella let out a cold snort from behind her. "Clara, your words are laughable. Is there any food the Crown Princess Manor cannot provide? Why would the great prince care for your silly little pastries? Let me tell you, this osmanthus cake made with lotus root starch is far rarer. The lotus root was brought overnight from the south. Isabella had been spoiled since childhood. Her father was the Grand General, and her brother the decorated Cavalry General. She was used to getting whatever she wanted, which had fostered a brash and arrogant personality." Her words immediately provoked Clara, who angrily slammed her plate onto the table. "You are nothing but the daughter of a brute, yet you dare to show off in front of me. Do you know who my father is? He is the Grand Tutor." Clara's flushed and flustered face was almost comical, but Isabella remained calm. "So what if you re the Grand Tutor's daughter? Don't you forget, my station is higher than yours. By rights, you should call me elder sister." Clara, of course, refused to submit and showed Isabella no courtesy. "You want me to call you sister? Look at yourself, are you even worthy? Let me tell you, we are both the princess concubines. Just you watch. I will not make your life in this manner easy. The prince's affection for me will certainly be greater than his for you." Isabella's face turned crimson with rage. She raised her hand to strike Clara, but I stopped her. "All right, that's enough. We are all sisters here. Why bicker like this? It's just breakfast. There's no need to harm our sisterly bond over it." Although they fell silent at my words, it was clear neither was willing to back down. I sighed softly. In that case, let the prince decide where he will have his breakfast today. I sent a servant to inquire with Arthur. The servant soon returned with a message. The prince would be dining in Lady Saraphina's chambers. Saraphina, who had been standing silently to the side, heard the news with a calm expression. She gave us a slight nod and, leaning on her maid's arm, walked towards her own rooms. With that, Clara and Isabella lost their appetite for arguing. They curtsied to me and left in a huff. The hall fell silent in an instant. My mind replayed Seraphina's composed, almost theatrical demeanor. Her cunning ran deep. She was not an opponent to be taken lightly. Some people appear harmless, but their hearts harbor a cruelty beyond imagination. Since I knew in this life what a formidable woman she was, I would let others deal with her. After all, no matter how well a fox disguises itself, it will one day reveal its true nature. After the three left, I finished my breakfast and returned to my room. I had barely sat down when I heard a knock on the door. Daisy opened it, and a moment later, Clara appeared before me. I smiled at her and offered her a seat. Before I could speak, Clara presented me with a pair of exquisite jade earrings. "Your Highness, these earrings were part of my dowry from my mother. I thought that with your unparalleled beauty they would suit you far better than me." I smiled. The jade was of superior quality, truly a fine gift. But I also knew that Clara was no simpleton, Gifting me the jade was a clear attempt to get on my good side and win me over as an ally. She didn't know, however, that I had no intention of getting involved in their squabbles. I had Daisy accept the jade, and in return, placed a pair of gold bracelets before her. My dear sister, these bracelets were a gift from the Emperor on my wedding day. I think a young beauty like you should adorn herself more lavishly for the prince. Such plainness is unlikely to capture his attention. My hint was clear. Clara's face lit up as she accepted the bracelets. Now that we both serve the prince, your gentle and meticulous nature gives me peace of mind, seeing I had no intention of forming an alliance. She fell silent for a moment before speaking again, choosing her words carefully. Your Highness saw today that the other two ladies are not easy to deal with. If the princess' favor towards them continues to grow, I fear your own position in this manor could be in jeopardy. She thought such words would sway me, little knowing her petty tricks were child's play to me. I feigned a helpless look and sighed deeply. But the prince is fond of them. What can I do to stand in his way? After all, his heart is what matters most. Clara hadn't expected the crown princess to be so submissive to the prince. Her resolve instantly crumbled. After a few more pleasantries, she departed in a hurry. After Clara left, I sat alone by the window, quietly, waiting for the next act of this drama to unfold. A month passed. During this time, Arthur spent 6 out of every 10 days in Saraphina's chambers. So when the news of her pregnancy spread, I was not surprised. Arthur was extremely attentive to this pregnancy, summoning the most renowned royal physicians to examine her. Only after they repeatedly confirmed the fetus was healthy did he relax. When Daisy told me the news, I too breathed a sigh of relief. This child would be a crucial pawn in my plan to bring down Saraphina. He absolutely had to be safe. I had Daisy take a 1,000-tael silver note from my dressing table and give it to the physician. Remember to tell him, I instructed, that this pregnancy must proceed without a single mishap. Otherwise, he will pay with his life. Daisy nodded. As she was leaving, I called out to her again, prepare the carriage. I am going to the Prime Minister's manor. In my past life. After learning of my suicide, my parents' hair turned white overnight. They publicly denounced the prince, but even though my father was the Prime Minister, the Emperor could not tolerate his son being criticized so openly. In his fury, he charged my entire family with insubordination, throwing them into the celestial prison where they were tortured to death. In this life, I feared my parents would hear about the concubines and rush to confront the prince on my behalf. So, I went to them first, both to reassure them and to urge them not to act rashly. The carriage stopped smoothly at the gates of the Prime Minister's manor. As I expected, when my parents heard the news from me, they flew into a rage and declared they were going to confront the prince immediately. I stopped them. Father, Mother, this was my idea. When I explained my plan, their anger gradually subsided. I told them that as the heir to the throne, Arthur would inevitably fill his harem one day. Rather than wait for him to bring it up, it was better for me to take the initiative and arrange for the concubines myself. By doing so, I would earn a reputation for being virtuous and graceful in Arthur's eyes, and it would prevent the other concubines from ever threatening my position. My parents listened to my pragmatic analysis and, nodding, finally abandoned their plan to confront the prince. As I was leaving, my mother took my hand. "Me daughter, I know your generosity doesn't come from love, but from having let him go. Only when you no longer love a man can you be indifferent to who he is with, or who he truly loves in his heart." Our eyes met, and in that silent gaze, 1,000 words were spoken. I knew my mother understood me better than anyone. From the day I chose to end my life in the river, the Catherine who had deeply loved the crown prince was already dead. Now, I would no longer cry over who he liked, nor would I fret over his moods. In this life, I would be myself. There is so much beauty in this world, and Arthur was no longer worthy of my love. After a few days of romantic bliss with his new concubines, Arthur's happiness began to wane. He discovered that the manor was becoming increasingly chaotic, so much so that it gave him headaches. Even the radiant image of his beloved Saraphina began to dim in his mind. For instance, Isabella started directing her animosity towards the pregnant Saraphina. No matter how much Saraphina tried to endure it, she couldn't tolerate Isabella's constant verbal abuse. Moreover, since Saraphina couldn't serve him due to her pregnancy, Isabella had her servants send Arthur his favorite pastries daily and bribed his attendants to ensure he would favor her more often. This, naturally, infuriated Saraphina. I watched their covert struggles with detached amusement. At the same time, I would say to Saraphina, Lady Isabella was spoiled by the general, since she was a child. So her personality is a bit straightforward. I'm sure her heart is kind. Otherwise, the prince wouldn't have her serve him so frequently. Then, I would whisper in Isabella's ear, although Saraphina entered the manor on the same day as you, she is now carrying the prince's child, which makes her status very noble. If she gives birth to this child, I'm sure the prince and the emperor will reward her handsomely. For the sake of the baby in her belly, you should try not to be so angry. Otherwise, I fear it will put the prince in a difficult position. After that, the conflict between them intensified. Daisy told me that Saraphina could sleep well at night because of a parrot Isabella kept in her courtyard. Word of their constant fighting inevitably reached Arthur's ears. Already burdened with matters of state, this news only added to his troubles. It was at this moment that Clara stepped forward. She played the part of an understanding and empathetic woman, a good listener for the prince's woes. Before long, Arthur began to rely on her more and more. Saraphina and Isabella never expected that their bickering would end up benefiting Clara entirely. So, they tacitly ceased their open conflict. Overnight, the Crown Princess Manor became so peaceful it felt strange. But I knew this tranquility was merely an illusion. Before a violent storm, the sea is always deceptively calm, as I predicted. The storm soon arrived. One day, I had just woken from my afternoon nap when I heard a commotion of shouting and crying from the rear courtyard. When I arrived, I found Clara kneeling on the ground, her cheeks flushed red with a clear handprint marking her face. Standing before her were none other than Saraphina and Isabella. What is going on here? Why are you kneeling on the ground? You will hurt your knees, sister. Please stand up and tell me what happened. Although I didn't know the specifics, I knew that as the virtuous crown princess, I had to play my part in their drama. I helped the trembling Clara to her feet. From the moment Arthur chose Clara to escape the bickering between Isabella and Saraphina, I knew this day would come. To be the recipient of immense favor means becoming a target for many. Unfortunately, Clara was so focused on winning the prince's affection that she forgot the danger of being too conspicuous. It was only when Clara was standing beside me that I noticed she had more than one handprint on her face. Her lip was split, with a trace of blood. I gasped in shock. Sister, how did your face get like this? What happened? Clara, sobbing, began to explain. Me maid, Penny, went to the small kitchen this afternoon to brew my calming medicine. But Seraphina's maid, Pearl, saw her and assumed Penny was poisoning Seraphina's pregnancy tonic. When Seraphina found out, she flew into a rage and struck me. I was upset, so I went to Sister Isabella for justice. But she also said I had impure intentions and that I was capable of such a thing. I know the prince has been having me serve him these past few days, and that both of you are unhappy about it. But that's because he finds comfort with me. Why must you frame me like this? After she finished, Clara covered her mouth with a handkerchief and began to weep softly, looking utterly pitiable. The hurried arrival of Arthur meant he had heard Clara's side of the story. His expression instantly darkened. I knew why he was displeased. He had fantasized about a life of moonlit romance with Saraphina after taking her as a concubine. But reality was a far cry from his fantasy. Forget romance, even simple peace and quiet had become a luxury. Seeing the woman he once placed on a pedestal gradually transform into someone who was quarrelsome, unfamiliar, and vexing, he must have been incredibly frustrated. But since she was his concubine and carrying his child, he couldn't simply reprimand her. He had to redirect his frustration onto someone else. Upon seeing the prince, Saraphina carefully cradled her belly and walked over to him, hiding in his embrace with a frightened look. "Your Highness, I was so scared. I can't believe Sister Clara would try to harm your child in my womb, and even when I caught her, she refused to admit it. If my maid, Pearl, hadn't seen Penny acting so suspiciously, I might have drunk that tonic, and my baby would be gone forever." At these words, Clara frantically shook her head, pleading her innocence to the prince. But when I saw the look of compromise in Arthur's eyes, I knew the truth didn't matter. What mattered was who he believed, or rather, who he chose to believe. "Your Highness, I truly did not poison Lady Saraphina. I have no grievance with her. Why would I do such a thing? Besides, at that time, the only things in the kitchen were her tonic and my calming medicine. If something went wrong with her tonic, I would be the prime suspect. Why would I be so foolish as to set such a trap for myself? Your Highness, they are framing me. You must seek justice for me." Clara's words were not without reason, but Saraphina had set this trap carefully and would not let her escape so easily. Seeing Arthur waver, she began to cry softly in his arms. "Your Highness, Sister Clara's words make it sound like I am to blame. If you do not believe me, then I will just leave the manor." With that, she turned to leave, but Arthur grabbed her wrist. "Saraphina, don't be foolish." He sighed. He knew a choice had to be made today, and Saraphina could not be the one sacrificed. Clara attempted to harm a royal heir. She is to be confined to her chambers, and is not to leave without my direct order. Furthermore, she is forbidden from receiving visitors from her family. She will never see them again. Clara collapsed to the ground in disbelief, feeling a pang of pity. I tried to intervene. "Me Prince, Lady Clara has served you for a long time. Even if she has no merits, she has labored. Perhaps you could forgive her this once." But Arthur ignored my words. "A gentleman's word is his bond. Go and see to Clara's arrangements." After everyone had left, Clara remained on the ground, her face streaked with tears, a pathetic sight. I feigned kindness, walking over to help her up. I spoke to her in a low, meaningful voice. "Sister Clara, I thought that with the prince's favor, you would one day bear his child. I never imagined it would come to this. Don't hold too much resentment towards Sister Saraphina. After all, she carries the prince's child. With a child, no matter what mistakes she makes in the future, the prince will likely forgive her for the child's sake." 2 months later, it was Saraphina's birthday. A birthday during pregnancy was certainly an occasion to be celebrated. I suggested to Arthur that we hold a grand celebration for her, a lively event to bring some joy to the manor. "Since everyone in the manor will be attending, perhaps your Highness could allow Clara to join as well. I hear she has been copying scriptures in her room every day. She must have realized her mistake by now." Thinking of Saraphina's birthday, Arthur flatly refused. I didn't press the matter. To ensure Saraphina had a happy birthday, I specially hired chefs from her hometown in the south to prepare the feast. I also spent a fortune on a set of fine silk robes as my gift to her. The people in the manor saw this and praised my generosity, remarking how other wives competed with concubines, whereas I put the concubines' needs first. I simply smiled. "Know that we are all in the Crown Princess manor. We are sisters. There's no need for such distance. Moreover, she is carrying the princess child. As the Crown Princess, it is my duty to care for her and help ease the princess' burdens." When these words reached Saraphina, she was overjoyed and grew even more arrogant. At the banquet, she thanked me profusely, saying it was her honor to serve the prince alongside a virtuous and magnanimous crown princess, like me during the feast. I didn't fail to notice Isabella, sitting in a corner, watching Saraphina bask in the attention. A flash of resentment crossed her eyes. Life went on. Saraphina's pregnancy was almost at 7 months, and she eagerly awaited the day she would meet her child. But I knew that day would never come. One day, as Arthur and I were leaving the palace gates, we saw Steward Zhang rushing towards us. He fell to his knees, trembling, and said to the prince, "Your Highness, Lady Saraphina, she has miscarried." By the time we rushed back to the manor, a pool of blood had already stained Saraphina's bed. She lay there, her face as white as a sheet, her forehead drenched in sweat. She looked to be in immense pain. The royal physician knelt before Arthur and reported that Lady Saraphina's child could not be saved. Lady Saraphina has been suffering from constant nightmares recently. The lack of rest during her pregnancy weakened her body, making it impossible to carry the child to term. You lie. As soon as he finished, Saraphina grabbed the edge of the bed and struggled to sit up. I was clearly poisoned. How could it be because of nightmares? The physician dared not say more, but Saraphina clearly didn't believe him. Her trembling finger pointed at each of us in turn. It must have been one of you. Was it Clara? Or you, Isabella? Or was it you, Catherine? Her eyes were bloodshot, her hair disheveled around her shoulders. She looked like a vengeful ghost. When no one answered, she started muttering to herself. My baby can be gone. My baby is still here, right? Someone must have harmed my baby. The prince will seek justice for me. Yes, I am the one the prince loves most. Arthur had been about to step forward to comfort her, but as he moved, Isabella grabbed his sleeve. My prince, I have something to report. I am 3 months pregnant. With those words, Arthur completely forgot Saraphina's grief. All his attention was now focused on the joy of Isabella's pregnancy. Saraphina stared in disbelief as Arthur beamed at Isabella. She struggled to get out of bed but found she had no strength. She began to scream at the prince in a rage, heedless of her own condition. Me prince, I just lost my child, and now Isabella is pregnant. She must be behind this. You must find out the truth for me. How can that witch be pregnant? She doesn't deserve it. The pain of losing a child is unbearable for any mother. I imagine at that moment, Saraphina wanted nothing more than to kill Isabella. But Isabella was pregnant now, and in this manner, a pregnant woman was untouchable. And at that moment, Arthur seemed to have forgotten that Saraphina was once the unobtainable love of his life. Now that she was with him day after day, he had discovered that the unique love he felt for her was, perhaps, not so special after all. So when he heard her frantic accusations, he sternly reprimanded the crazed-looking Saraphina. How could you say such a thing? The child is innocent. Even the physician said this was due to your own lack of rest. Why must you blame others? There is no point in saying more. From now on, you will stay in your room. You are forbidden to leave, lest you harm Isabella. After Arthur left, the task of caring for Saraphina naturally fell to me. A week later, she was able to walk again. When I went to see her as usual, she was wearing plain clothes, unadorned, sitting by the window, and sewing a small baby bib in the sunlight. I recognized the bib. It was one she had left half-finished. When she saw me, a faint, weak smile touched her pale lips. Your Highness, isn't this bib beautiful? It's a pity my child will never have the chance to wear it. Seeing her like this, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pity for her, but at the same time, I knew she deserved no sympathy from me. If not for her, my own child in my past life would not have been lost, and I would not have ended up drowning myself in a river. I said nothing, merely sitting with her for a while before leaving. I had experienced the pain of losing a child, that feeling of your world collapsing, of being torn apart. I knew that beneath Saraphina's calm exterior, a furious hatred was brewing. A few days later, Daisy told me that Saraphina had sent her maid to buy a lethal poison. I nodded when I heard the news but told no one else. This game, I thought, would soon be over. On the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival, a banquet was held in the manor. Isabella, now 5 months pregnant, clung to Arthur's arm, laughing and chatting with the other princes, not forgetting to show off her condition. When the dancers took the stage, Isabella was busy coaxing Arthur to feed her grapes. The two were so engrossed in each other that they didn't notice one of the dancers slowly approaching them. It wasn't until a small poisoned blade flew towards Isabella's stomach that the smile on her face finally vanished, replaced by shock. At the same time, Saraphina, disguised as a dancer, was seized by the guards. Blood gushed from Isabella's abdomen, quickly forming a pool on the floor, surrounding the two of them. With a roar of fury from the prince, Isabella died on the spot, and Saraphina was killed by Arthur with a single sword thrust to the throat. The love of his life, the one he had cherished, met her end on that day. In just one day, 2 lives were lost in the Crown Princess manor. Saraphina's death caused little stir, but Isabella was the general's daughter. The general immediately submitted a memorial to the throne, denouncing the prince and berating him for failing to protect his own woman. Looking at the furious general, I was suddenly reminded of my own father in my past life. Knowing he was at fault, Arthur apologized to the general and offered 10,000 taels of gold as compensation. Although the general said nothing more, I knew he would not let the matter rest so easily. On the day Saraphina and Isabella were buried, Arthur came to my chambers and asked me what he had done wrong. Why must fate snatch away every woman I love? They were all so gentle and considerate before. Why did they become so jealous and unrecognizable in this manner? I thought they could all live together in harmony. Was I wrong? I watched his pathetic display with cold eyes. He was not a fool. He knew that one mountain cannot house 2 tigers. But people are greedy once they have love. They crave the adoration of many more. The result of such greed is to lose everything. My prince, you still have me. I will always be by your side. I suppressed my revulsion and spoke the words he needed to hear. Arthur slowly raised his head, nodded, and gripped my hands tightly. Catherine, I promise you. For the rest of my life, there will be only you and Clara, no one else. But I no longer believe your words. The news that the crown prince had been killed by wild beasts during a royal hunt arrived, while I was quietly embroidering in my room. When his body was brought back to the manor, I turned pale with shock. His entire body was covered in deep wounds, torn apart. There was not a single unmarred inch of skin. Upon hearing the news, the emperor collapsed and fell into a coma from which he would not wake. All the staff in the Crown Prince Manor were dismissed. I arranged for Clara to be released from the palace. She told me that it was she and the Grand General who had orchestrated Arthur's death. She was the one who placed the bait that attracted wild beasts on Arthur's horse. Otherwise, the animals would not have singled him out. And the general, it turned out, was secretly skilled in commanding beasts. Arthur had caused the death of his beloved daughter, and he was never going to let him get away with it. They played the game of using a borrowed knife to kill very well. You tell me all this. Aren't you afraid I will report it to the emperor? Clara smiled. Catherine, I know you hated him too. Otherwise, why would you have tolerated your husband spending his nights with other women? Yes, of course, I hated him. And so, his death was the only true compensation for what I had suffered.